Have you ever been in that situation where there was something really important that you wanted to talk about? Something that you knew would help people, something that you knew they needed to think about, but they didn't want to talk about it. They didn't think it was that interesting, that sexy. Welcome to that for me. Look, I know that if I was doing a resume or a portfolio tip, this would get a lot more views than what this probably will, and I so hope that I'm wrong. I've tried to talk about design ethics before. Didn't get a big reaction. So we're going to rebrand it. We're going to call it Consequence Design. But today what I want to do is to get you to understand the impact of what you do. Understand the impact that we have on society. Understand that what we do is more than making pretty pictures or writing words, or just if you create anything, you have an impact on people. And I want you to be able to understand that. So we're trying to make it fun. We'll make it fast. Just give me 10, 15 minutes at the most. That's all I'm going to ask. But just give it a chance, because I think this really is one of those things that you need to know about. It's going to help. It's going to make things better now more than ever. So I know, again, it's not the sexiest topic in the world. But let's talk about and get into design ethics. So what's going on, everybody? Welcome into the Crazy One channel. As always, I'm your host, Stephen Gates, and this is the show where we talk about creativity, leadership, design, and a whole lot of other stuff. Now, do me a favor. If you like this content, and if you want to get more of it, make sure you hit the subscribe button and hit that little bell so that you get the latest episodes whenever those come out. Now, like I said, this was a topic that I talked about in one of the episodes of the podcast in the past, because it's one of these things that I feel like is really important. But I want to talk about it again, and let's do it in a different form. Let's add some visuals. Let's do some other things, because I know it's not fun. It's not easy. But damn if I don't think this is important, and it's something I think that we all need to think about. So let's get into, again, just talking a little bit more detail about what is design ethics and why the hell should you care? So I said I was going to keep this quick. I want to keep that promise. Now, again, for me, this is about how do we get people to listen to this conversation. So what I did was rebrand design ethics as consequence design. And so welcome to the new age of consequence design. Now, as we talk about ethics or consequence, those are really big words that can mean a lot of different things. And what I want to do is to be able to define that for all of us. And so for me, whether you are designing, writing, coding, if you are just creating anything, it really means that we want to care about the environmental, cultural, and social impact of design. And again, design for me is a very broad word that encompasses just sort of creating anything. But it's that we need to care about the impact of what it is we do. Now, for me, there's a simple question, right? Like, why do you care? What am I talking about? Why should this matter to you? And so what I want to do is I want to give you 3 examples. And again, these aren't meant to pick on these companies. They aren't meant to call them out. I think every product has different ethical issues, but these are 3 that I think really crystallize the problem and crystallize the impact of what it is we do. The first one was raised by 2 employees at Facebook who were just using something as simple as a soap dispenser. And the white gentleman walked up and put his hand under and he got soap, followed by the gentleman who was with him, who was African-American, who put his hand under and got nothing. However, found that by putting a paper towel on top of his hand, it then dispensed soap. And you may be saying to yourself, Steve, it's a soap dispenser. But again, this is a soap dispenser that now has a racial bias, and that is not okay. That again, we're either willfully ignoring things, we aren't putting in the work, we aren't raising this question to see why this could be a problem and the way that it can affect people. I think that this has come up in other ways. One of the biggest examples that I always use, and I think some people's eyes get sort of wide whenever I use this as an example, is Pokemon Go. I hear so many people talk about this game, and understandably so. Whenever you look at the digital experiences that got to 50 million users the fastest, this is number 1. It took things like Twitter or Facebook years to be able to get to 50 million users. Pokemon Go did it in 19 days. And I think for those of you who don't know, this is a mobile game, and what you're able to do is to go out and to use your phone, going out into the real world, to find these little mythical creatures, and you trap them, and you're able to compete with them and train them and do all sorts of different things. But it's this really sort of interesting overlay of a digital experience on top of the real world. Sounds easy enough, sounds fun enough to be able to do this, but it started to create some real issues. The first one was that, and I think you could easily argue this might just be natural selection, but people started to get hurt playing the game. They were running into traffic. They were having accidents because they were playing the game while they were driving. But these are things that in the design, we could have seen that certain areas, highways for instance, or if we started to go certain speeds, the game maybe shouldn't be able to work because there are just certain things where the intersection of those, we might need to start to save people for themselves. That problem escalated even further. A number of people have actually been killed playing this game. In this particular case, a teenager was shot on private land because he went on there to go trap this rare Pokemon. The owner of the land just thought that he was trespassing and ended up shooting him dead. And again, this is the game sort of helping to incite somebody to be there. And again, to not understand that not all land is necessarily equal. And look, this is not a case where I think that these experiences on their own are the cause of the problem. Personal responsibility, of course, plays a piece in this. But it is thinking about what is the impact that it's having. It went further than that, as the game started to have problems, people started to notice that they started to react to and try to fix those problems because a lot of the creatures started to shift to predominantly affluent and white neighborhoods. And that decision obviously creates real problems and real ethical issues in a number of different ways. But maybe the pinnacle of sort of what some of the issues were here was that the game actually put a poison gas releasing Pokemon inside of the National Holocaust Museum. And like I said, I think that this was a case where I don't think anybody did this deliberately. What I think is that there were a lot of different teams that made individually good decisions that came together to create a really bad outcome. So there's one team that dealt with the creatures, another team that dealt with the location, and none of them sort of realized that, hey, if we put this creature in this location, it is going to create a really, really bad outcome. And so again, I think that the issues can come in that form. But I think they can also come in really disturbing ways as well. And I think, one of the ones that I've sort of paid a lot of attention to lately has come out of, and this is not just Snapchat. This is a phenomenon that's being fueled by any app that allows you to really alter your image. So any of the image filters, any of those sort of things, because what they're doing is they've actually been able to create a real phenomenon inside of plastic surgery called Snapchat dysmorphia. And what this means is that people have become so enamored by and so love this altered image that they see through these image filters that they're going out and having plastic surgery to match that look. So they get the sunken cheekbones, the bigger eyes, the exaggerated proportions, because they want to be photographed that way all the time. And again, you can just simply say this is a game or this is a filter, and it's up to individual choice. But I think we have to recognize that that's just an escapist way of looking at this, that again, there's real consequence to what it is we do. And the other thing I would sort of argue is I think that we are all, and I would 100% put myself in this category as well, we all have really sort of been a part of the problem, because I think, the issue has been that for many of us, we may have been going along with this and again, maybe not thought about or realized what it was. We've used words like engagement or gamification or stickiness, right? We've all seen these in briefs. We've all been asked to be able to create these experiences. But the thing I think that we're starting to see is that these are words that have made ethical design problems just acceptable, if not even a target for what it is that we want to create. In many cases, just simply disregarding or not thinking about the consequence of the work that we do. But it also really, I think, shows up in three very distinct places. The first one is in content design. I think we have seen that the way you edit a photo or the way that you edit a video, the way that the particular word that you use can tell a very, very different story than maybe what the entire video or the entire photo would have said, and that we can create narratives out of that, which obviously then creates ethical issues because we're altering the narrative to fit our own purposes. You've seen it through experience design. I think this is a lot of the apps that I showed, is that there is real impact to these experiences. This isn't just fun or lighthearted, that we need to recognize and realize that there can be longer lasting effects in what we do. And then finally, what is really this area around organizational design, the impact of our company and our culture, the impact that our company has on its consumers, and the impact that culture has on the work that we produce. Like I said, I just 100% do not believe that anybody who was working on Pokemon said, hey, let's go do these things. I think it was just a lot of individually good decisions without really thinking about collectively what is the impact, and that a few too many things got in the way of that happening. And so I think the reality is then to ask ourselves, what do we do to try to change any of this? The first thing I would say is, look, I think we all need to admit that your product priority already has ethical issues. Because in almost every industry, we are doing something that may not be the best for our consumers. We are creating behaviors that may not be the most beneficial for them and may be more beneficial to our business. We need to think about and admit that this is going on and to start taking more responsibility for that. I think that we need to start doing pre-mortems where we actually are able to discuss and think about what issues might be created with the things that we are about to design for. And then how do we actually start to do things that would be able to investigate that, look at that, mitigate that, minimize that. And many of that, I think, is going to come out of just doing more consumer testing. Too many companies have gotten too far away from actually talking to the people who use their product. And I think because of this has sort of come this willful blindness of what this impact is, that we just simply want to put it out there and then we watch the revenue or we watch the clicks or the subscribes or whatever it is to see if it's actually working. But I think it also is about breaking down silos. And I think hopefully you've seen that example of that, in many cases, I think, we can go out and make individually good decisions that come together to have collectively bad consequences just because there is so much in the matrix and in the silos and the way we're kept apart and the way companies are led that cause these issues. But I think we also need to ourselves try to break our work, to try to find the problems, to figure out how could we be better, what could we be doing differently, to do those sort of things, to seek this out and not just sort of willfully ignore it. Because for me, I've always believed that inaction is an action. And so to say that, again, we just didn't know or that it wasn't a part of it isn't good enough anymore. And then I think to go back and show our work, to do a post-mortem, to say, look, what were we able to accomplish? Are there other issues we didn't think about? How do we need to be able to respond to that? To make that a part of the postmortem as well, and not just simply look at the velocity and what did we deliver. But I think this also, there are going to be some challenging times ahead, in particular for the moment that we're in now with what's going on with this pandemic. Because ethics is an investment, whether it is personal, part of your team or your company, this is a willful thing that we need to be able to decide is going to be important for us. And in many cases, I think this is my challenge to you, is that, as companies don't want to change, don't want to evolve, don't want to think about these things, what is your role going to be? Because it is easier to just ignore it. It's easier to just say it's somebody else's problem, or again, to put it on the individual and say it's their responsibility, they should have known better. I don't necessarily believe that that's the case. But also, as the time that we're going through right now with this pandemic, what is your role going to be if your company tries to cash in on this epidemic to be able to say, oh, Mr. or Mrs. Consumer, you're only going to feel better. We're only going to get better if you buy our product. And is that true? Is it not? But I think these are the sort of things that, again, are going to have very real reactions on our society and on individual people. But this is why, for me, and this is why I call this the age of consequence design, is because we need to realize that we are in the consequence business. It is easy to think that we are just in the visual business or the word business or like whatever that is. But those things have consequences. And I think too often we've divorced ourselves from that reality, and that we need to realize this is what is really going on, that what is the real impact of what we do, that we are causing screen addictions and psychological problems and Snapchat dysmorphias and all these other things, and that we have a role that we need to step up and understand what is going on there. Well, hopefully, like I said, it was such a crash course in what that is, but I hope you can start to see why this is important, how this is important, why it's just something we need to start to think about, because look, we have a responsibility, whether we like it or not, to be able to think about these things, to understand the impact and the consequence of what it is we do. It's going to be an inescapable fact of what our role is in so many things from now on. So, like I said, hopefully it makes you a little bit more enlightened. Hopefully, pass it around, make other people aware of what's going on here, because this is going to be something that we're just going to have to work on. So like I said, hopefully if you like it, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button so you get the latest videos whenever those come out, and hit that little bell because it'll let you know. But hey, as always, stay crazy.